Today, dear friends, we are going to continue to listen to the story of John Masuku. John Masuku is a leading journalist and a broadcaster and communicator in Zimbabwe. Today, he is going to tell us more about his involvement with the radio Voice of the People. He's going to talk also about what he thinks about the questions and issues related to the integrity in broadcasting, integrity of journalism, speaking truth to power, and also he's going to tell us about his faith in Jesus and how his faith has led him through many years. So friends, listen to our friend John Masuku. And John Masuku, welcome again.
Let me be very clear. I'm not the one who established this radio. I only joined it 2 years after it was established. It was established by people in civil society, those who are working for NGOs, and lawyers and media practitioners. Because in my country, the Broadcasting Act only allowed the state broadcaster, the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation, and before that, the Rhodesia Broadcasting Corporation, to be the only broadcaster. And by the only broadcaster, I mean it will be the only one owning radio stations, and it will be the only one owning TV stations. So there was no diversity of voices and diversity of media. And when it came to big events like elections, you'd find that opposition parties, civil societies, and some critical individuals would be left out of discussions about governance issues and so forth. So the formation of Radio Voice of the People was to give those people a voice, including the ordinary person, to voice out what they wanted Zimbabwe to be like. So we're providing that alternative voice. We're one of the first ones, but later on, even up to now, so many other alternative voices were then established. Ours was broadcasting via the Netherlands. We were hiring transmitters of radio, Netherlands worldwide. It's now defunct, it's no longer there, but the transmitters are now being hired on a commercial basis, I think by a company which was formed thereafter. And then there was another station that was established after us called Studio 7, but it belongs to the Voice of America. It is staffed by Zimbabweans, some of whom we worked with here. And you recall that soon after I joined Radio Voice of the People, it was bombed to the ground. And until now, we don't know who bombed it. But we want to believe that the state had something to do with it. It has never given us an answer. They are still investigating. And because of the hate language that we received from officials at that time, we sometimes believe that these people were attacking you left, right, and center. They may be believed, although we don't have that evidence as it is, but nothing was unveiled as to who bombed us. Nothing was ever said about any results of any investigation that came out and so forth. But what is known is that at that time, in the state media and everywhere, were being attacked left, right, and center as people who want to divide the country, as people who want to cause tribalism, want to cause division and so forth. I'm glad that the present government have said that, no, look here, let bygones be bygones. And anyone who is running a media organization, we want to believe they're professional and we can work with them and so forth. Which is why it is not even surprising that last year I was hired by the government as a spokesperson for the government in a very important commission of inquiry after post-election violence. That would have happened at that time that I'm talking about. But that was just, and also my station was covering a lot of what was happening in that commission of inquiry. And I do attend a lot of government functions and so forth. So at least things, the perceptions have changed from that time. There's a lot of tolerance. We can register ourselves and practice as journalists. I can interview government ministers. My journalists can interview government ministers. We attend government functions and so forth. So these are the changes that we've seen. But those days, there was a lot of hate for these alternative voices, which were labeled pirate stations. And you recall that at one time we were arrested and we spent almost 10 months going to the courts and the case was dismissed because of lack of evidence. And we ended up going over to different countries to broadcast from there. We spent some time in Africa, where we established our station in Cape Town and in Johannesburg. Although I remained in Zimbabwe, I didn't move to South Africa, but my staff moved to South Africa and they were broadcasting from there until we moved back to Zimbabwe during the time of what was called the inclusive government, or the government of national unity, because within the agreement of the parties, there was also a call for all those alternative radio stations to come back home and apply for licenses, which we did, but we were not awarded any license. But I must say that the environment has changed from the time we were bombed, the time we were arrested, the time we were raided into courts, the time we were denigrated in the public media. There is that atmosphere of appreciating that there can be alternative media, but of course, there are some forms of licensing and all forms of registration that you have to practice as an accredited journalist, which we are doing. And but of course, we don't have a broadcasting license in Sitwe, which is why we utilize the internet. We are utilizing the internet because all our efforts to establish a radio station have been very, very difficult. In fact, the radio stations that were established, that we have as commercial or private radio stations, all of them are linked to either government parastatals or to ruling party stalwarts. We don't have a purely commercial private company situated at the moment. And it has taken long for the government to call for community radio licenses, which they have done. But there have been postponements during the coronavirus. So as a result, I think these will be considered as soon as the pandemic has eased. And there are now also some campus radios. There's one station which has already been licensed. So the impression and the pronouncements that we get from the current government is that, look here, no, Zimbabwe is a pirate. As long as they obey the laws of Zimbabwe, as long as they are professional, as long as they use those allowed alternative media, and they're not doing anything against the state of Zimbabwe, let them do that. So this is how we find ourselves, and many others doing a lot of things. Of course, if you peddle falsehoods, you get arrested. So yeah, I think that's how I can answer your question. But I stress that I'm not the one who started the station. I was just invited as an employee.
Yeah, it's good that we hear this qualification. And I know that regardless of the fact that you did not start the station, you, for many years, you played an important part in the work of that radio station. And I can be a little bit modest when it comes to the work that you have achieved without and with this radio station. My feeling is that the radio voice of the people played for years a significant role in actually delivering the news and information to people, which the government stations did not want to deliver, or did not want to deliver truthfully. And I'm not surprised that some of the things happened then, like you mentioned that your facilities were bombed. You ended up even in prison for a short while, and you had a court case, which, thanks God,
and we won an award in London for our work.
Evidences, whatever, but it just proves that you were actually with your team doing some important work in your country for many years. I'm glad to hear things are somewhat better today, although as I listen to you, I think there is still room for improvement. Let me ask you another question. This has to do with faith, because I know you and your family, you are people of faith. You, your wife, your children. How much has your faith, or what role has your faith played in your private and professional life? When I'm thinking about some of those challenging situations that you had, you shared a little bit about the importance.
Yeah. Well, it has played a very, very significant role. in that I've always been a believer from a very tender age. I'm not in that league who says I discovered Jesus when I was, this year. That I think I discovered him almost at birth, and I have no regrets about saying that. So that has always been a driving force throughout my life, and whatever obstacles that I've faced, I've always believed in prayer, in hope, and in goodwill, and I don't believe in revenging. And I think the fact that I was resilient and persistent, that even at a time when you are considered as an enemy of the state, and then in the long run, people discover that you are truthful and honest with what you do, and you end up playing very critical roles even in state functions, to the extent that even those who I was working with in civil society, they were a bit surprised when they found me being employed by the office of the president and cabinet on a commission of inquiry. Some would have thought that I've lost my path of honesty and accountability. No, I was just being professional and also playing an important role in my country, because it doesn't mean that even if you are critical of things that you think are being done wrong, you end up hating your country. I think you will also recall that all our encounters in Croatia, whenever I spoke in front of people at Rome, be it in Fujne, in Zagreb, in Privenica, in Rijeka, wherever we're gathering in Split to talk about our countries, I never denigrated my country or my government, but I would mention things that were not being done properly, and how, as citizens, were voicing out in order for them to be done properly. So I've always believed that, as a believer, that it is not my duty to be denigrating your own country, but you can mention that we feel as citizens we are missing this and that, and we are urging our leaders to do this and that. And I think I was consistent with that, to the extent that having lost all that respect, maybe being called somebody who's running a pirate station, and later on people realized that you could actually be employed for a very important job like the one that I did for the Commission of Inquiry, without taking any sides, but reporting and representing a government commission as it should be represented. I think, again, it was a lesson to many when they saw me performing that job. I think I also sent you some videos and so forth, and you could judge for yourself that this man is just reporting objectively about what the commission was set up to do. Whether people agree with the results or whether they agree on who is on that commission and so forth, mine was to report what it was doing, and I think I did it very well. And even now, many people still give accolades as to that role that I played in working for my own government, despite the fact that in other circles I'm critical, in my journalism or in my interviews when I'm discussing, some deteriorating aspects of our politics or our economy and so forth. But people have to see that while you're critical, you do not denigrate where you've come from. I have no other home besides Zimbabwe. Croatia is my second home, of course, but Zimbabwe is my first home. Hungary is my third home, but still Zimbabwe remains my first home. So I would like Zimbabwe to be better than what it is economically, politically, and socially. And it's sad to see that many people have left this country in order to live in other countries. They're now making other countries their homes and so forth. But despite all these difficulties that you're talking about, Tihomir, I could have sought refuge in your country, in Croatia, could have sought refuge in the UK, in Hungary, in all the countries that I've visited. I've traveled far and wide, but I always came back to Zimbabwe. Even the time when our court case was going on, I would fly out and come back. I remember at a certain meeting in London, someone saying, "Why are you going back?" Because we were coming back to Zimbabwe for a trial. And someone said, "But you can just speak and say you are running away from the police." I said, "No, I'm not going to. I'm going back for that trial." And then even when we established the offices in South Africa, I said, "No, the others can go there, but I'm going to work from Zimbabwe." And I never went to South Africa except to travel there several times on leadership roles and so forth. So that's me and my faith and my belief. And even at UOP, when chips are down in terms of funding and so on, I always believe that God will intervene. And at the time when things are really going down, I do get a funder who supports the work that we'll be doing, and they support us up to this stage. And also, I think since I also have the faith that the fact that I play that mentorship, capacity building role to others, God will also reward me by giving me resources to do that, so that young men and women can also progress and go the path that I've traveled for the past 5 decades.
There is one thing, John, that really comes out of as a very important from what you have just said a moment ago, that despite the fact that you worked for a number of years for the radio voice of the people, this was not an act of rebellion or disobedience or trying to put your country down. It was not because you didn't love your country, but it's because you did love your country that you wanted to be the voice that is sometimes critical when necessary about the things that deserve to be criticized about. That is very important, I think, because today,
yes,
I am realizing in a number of places, there is more and more like some people are trying to tell us that if you are critical of something related to your country or government, you must be an enemy. You must not love your country since you are doing this. But this is not the case. If you do love your country, then you have to have a freedom and duty and responsibility to also, as we would say, speak truth to the power, speak true, not just to be saying causal things, but actually addressing things that needs to be addressed. I kind of got this from what you are saying.
Yes, that's true. You got me right there. That it is important that we can be critical, but it does not mean that we hate our country. You can even do that in the family. You can be critical of what your brother does, or even your own parent. If you feel that they're a bit astray, I think with some of the stories we had in Rome, where parents would desert families and then they end up being adopted and so forth. You may be critical of that, but in the long run, you may want to forgive your father, you want to forgive your brother when they've seen the light. They have to come back to your life, and the life goes on like that. You don't necessarily create that enmity that ends up, with totally divorcing each other and not have anything to do with each other. That's not part of my faith. Even what we are taught through the teachings of Christ, more so in the writings of Paul, is also to respect his establishment. But unfortunately, some establishments, even if you respect them, they end up not respecting the subordinate. It's like if you're a leader at a company, you should respect those under you, and they should also respect you. Or if they respect you, it doesn't mean that you then have to abuse them. You have to treat them with respect. But we see at times governments sort of disrespecting the citizens who respect them by cheating, by being corrupt, by not really listening to some of their petitions for a better life or for better governance. Or even it is cheating if establishments do not respect the constitution or the laws of the land. So this is what I say, and I think that's what you are reading. It does not mean that you are rebellious. If you come to me and open your statement by saying, now that you hate your country, I'll say, no, now that I'm critical of some bad things, I don't hate my country. I love my country. That's why I've never left it, because I don't have any other. That's why I go in and go out and come back. It is not my business to be denigrating it at all. Although when you read in my reports where I have to mention something that I feel is not done properly, I would say it as it is. I will call a spade and not the young one of a shovel.
And if you remember, I'm listening carefully to you. And if you remember, even as you are coming to be part of the team of Rome, renewing our minds to Croatia, that likewise, we every year we would gather a number of young people, young leaders from many countries together, and we would be critical of certain things like nationalism, like mistreatment and discrimination against minorities. We would be critical against a number of things that are
Yes.
kind of forms of social sicknesses, but we would never do this because we hated our countries. We would do it
No,
because we wanted to see the health of our countries to improve and to be better. So we are
exactly.
completely in agreement about this. And let me ask you one more
So
question.
can you imagine while we are there? Can you imagine that in our meeting at the BBC in 1989, if we did not respect each other, if we were discriminating against each other, I wouldn't be have gone to Rome with my family all those years. I would have networked with the people that I've networked with through Rome. By the way, besides Rome, I've also established many other friends that I met there away from Rome in Africa here and other parts of the world. For instance, I would want to mention our dear friend Bennett Thompson, who is late. May his dear soul rest in peace. At one time he really supported us to attend Rome. I know he wouldn't have wanted me to mention that, but me and my family were very grateful for that. And I know he supported many other youngsters from the States and from the Balkans in many ways. And unfortunately, I didn't take part in the Zoom meeting that was there about him because there was another engagement. Anthony Kodro, an old friend, we ended up, networking while he was in South Africa and even here in Zimbabwe. He has come here, visited us, and he has connected me with very, very important people, including diplomats and so forth. So that is the spirit that we inculcate, and that is the love that we always boast of. That is the love we learned from Jesus Christ, because what we learned at Rome, renew our minds. Some people I met, they were not necessarily Christians, but if they told you about how they loved the teachings of Christ, and eventually some became Christians, but they were very, very clear about their love for the teachings of Christ, of Jesus Christ, for mankind. And I really liked that. So each time I interacted with some people, I wouldn't take it for granted that they've become Christians and such. But one thing that was common with them, that was very clear, is that they embraced the teachings of Christ. And whether they developed to be Christians, that's something else. And I'm glad that you invited so many people from so many backgrounds, including those from Palestine, from Israel, from the States, and so forth, from Africa, us from Africa. And at one time, we had friends from Rwanda who told us those stories about the genocide in Rwanda, and those from Burundi, and from Tanzania, and so forth. So these are great lessons. And while those stories were being told, the pivotal, the focus was on the teaching of Christ. What did Christ teach us about loving each other? Love one another as you love yourself, love your neighbor, and so forth. So that's what was coming out of those stories. So this is why, over and above being just a Christian in my upbringing and in my life, just the teachings, focusing on the teachings of Christ, is something that I enhanced after attending several Rome meetings, and I understood what it meant, especially when they were isolated and saying, this is what Christ taught us, and this is how, as mankind, we have to live, love one another, share the common good, also, what we get from the Beatitudes, what we get from the Ten Commandments, all those were very, very impactful teachings that we repeated. As you showed us those videos about the troubles that you went through in the Balkans, and we shared what we went through in our countries during the Liberation War, and when it ended, how we reconciled, and the stories from Rwanda, Burundi, and other parts of the world.
I completely agree with you, John. And since you have been saying so much about, which I wasn't really necessarily thinking we will be talking about this, but it's good to bring into the story because it's an integral part of the story of our conversation when you mentioned Rome, renewing our minds, because you are just as much as part of Rome as I am,
Yes.
and many of other friends. And as I've been listening to you, what really warms my heart is that however imperfect people we are, but there were 2 or 3 ingredients that kind of made Rome work. Let me put it like this. One is developing permanent friendship. Another one is focus on leadership, which is of service. Another one was building peace and reconciliation. And then the most important ingredient, which is the platform of everything, is the person of Jesus, teachings of Jesus. And I think the strength of this beautiful movement has been that we were bringing together around the same table young people, leaders from different backgrounds, not only Christians, but Muslims, and people who are agnostics, or even they couldn't say whether they believe anything, of different faiths, bringing them around, I would say, the table of Jesus without really kind of forcing anything on them, but just making this available to them, that he spoke to everyone who would come. And the other powerful ingredient was that our team has always been trained on the importance of demonstrating practical love for the entire community that would come together for those 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes.
There is no point teaching about loving your neighbor and loving your enemy if there is a collision, say, within the team. But when people see a demonstration of love in the team, people made from different walks of life, from different countries, from different ethnic groups, and yet walking together in love, that kind of on its own does a half of a job, I would like this. And when you put on this the teachings of Jesus and you work on bringing people together, building bridges across all kinds of divides, then you get a beautiful thing. And I think that this kind of work is needed today even more than when we started 20 years ago after the wars that we had in the former Yugoslavia. Let me, at the end, ask you one more question. You also mentioned that at this time moving towards mentoring and imparting some of your experiences in life to the younger generation. So my question would be, what would you say to young people today in Africa or world about why it is important to consider journalism and be active as a journalist, active in media today?
Yes. Journalism has been my life, and I've been journalism, as it were, especially when it comes to broadcasting. But what for? What is that journalism been doing? What part is it played? If you find yourself involved in journalism that does not proffer solutions, journalism that does not bring any change of life or environment for the better for your community, then you are in the wrong place altogether. I remember when I started out in journalism, quite a number of colleagues left because they wanted to join insurance in order to earn lots of money. They wanted to join another company because they wanted to earn this money. They wanted to do this and that. But I remained focused on saying, no, okay, I really want to remain in journalism and I want to grow in journalism. Unfortunately, journalism in this part of the world does not pay much. Doesn't really pay. It's risky. It can get you into trouble. But I just loved it and I continue to love it. And where you can make contacts and networks and so forth, yes, you can make your own money. You can establish your own station. You can establish your own business. In journalism, you can run your own radio station. It can be profitable. So journalism is not only working for somebody, but it's also carrying out some projects. unfortunately, we live in an environment where business growth is very, very minimal in that sphere of journalism, and very risky. Our advertising revenue, ad spend, and so forth has gone down. That many newspapers are closed. I think you've been reading that many publications the world over have closed down because of lack of sustainability. And I've told you that even my own station, we've scaled down on things that we used to do over the years because of sustainability. Even the commercial radio and television stations have closed down because of sustainability. Sustainability because industry has leapt down, or because ways of doing things have changed, including the coming of the internet, which has brought in so many other discoveries regarding access to information, which has rendered old ways of doing radio or television sort of weak and useless. So much that if you don't change with those times and embrace some of these technologies, you are left behind, and you feel that journalism or broadcasting is not doing very well. So I would urge those going into journalism, first of all, to respect what the profession is there for. That is disseminating correct information, not falsehoods, not lies, not fake news, and so forth. And to make sure that we don't live in a world of fake news, which are peddled by people who are taking advantage of social media. Unfortunately, many people still believe that mainstream media still has a role in correcting some of these fake news. Even if they see something being posted, it takes them time. They also have to check what is mainstream media said, or what is so-and-so saying before they also repost or share that information. So I know youngsters at times post falsehood because they want to build their names and their professions from that. I'm telling them, I'm warning them that they will never do anything of that sort. They will never build their careers out of that. They should embrace professional journalism, but think outside the box. Be the Steve Jobs of journalism. Think of new ways of doing things. Think of making journalism highly profitable. Think of making it highly useful to society. Our society right now is broken apart because of different shades of information that people receive and share. But let journalism correct that by bringing people together through sharing of the teachings, or not necessarily the teachings of the Bible, but some of the things that come from the teachings of Christ, such as love for one another, forgiveness, and honesty, and not lying, and so forth. All that can come through journalism, and it can build a better society. And I just hope that during these lockdowns that we have, we're going to reflect, and when the world is fully opened up, we're going to do things a bit differently, rather than hating each other, fighting wars, being racialistic. I see there in America, you have had recent problems after a Black American was killed, and some of the statements that even come from the biggest office in the land. All those things, I hope they're going to change for the better, and we love one another despite our diversity. In fact, this issue of diversity, many people don't really understand that you may come from different, from diverse backgrounds, but that does not stop you from loving one another. That is why, as we learn in the teachings of Christ, that he embraced people from different borders that they hated, including Samaria. That's why he used the parable of the Good Samaritan in order to drive it into the Jews that you can love your neighbor as you love yourself, because you know the hatred that was there between the Jews and the Samaritans. So that also applies to the way we live together in different parts of the world. So let's love one another. Let's use journalism and media not to peddle for falsehoods, not to promote hatred, but to love one another, and stop all these war of words, war for arms races, and so forth. Journalism can stop all that. Even our investigative journalism should be done in a responsible way for the betterment of society, not just for the fun of making other people look bad, but just to make sure that it is done to make sure that our society is a better place to live in. So I think that's what I can do, or that's what I can add about those who are entering journalism. That yes, it has got some risks in reporting and so forth, but your purpose should be to tell the truth, spread the truth. Yes, you can bring in the business aspect and make money. Yes, you can use your multi-skilling in order to make money and so forth. But at the end of the day, don't make money, don't be rich out of telling lies.
I think this is a very proper way to wrap up our conversation today. It has been, John, my pleasure to spend this time with you. And I want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to have a better insight into your life, what you think, what matters to you. And I'm hoping that in not so distant future, we might do something like this again. And I am still planning, God willing, when the opportunity comes to visit your country. Thank you, John.
Yes, please do. Yeah, but what I wanted to add is, as you conclude, is that I said it in the middle of our conversation that some of these stories that we share, it will also be good. You and I, to actually, yes, we've recorded them, and I think this will be kept for posterity, for the future as a video. But we also have to find time to also document some of the paths that we have traveled, not only to gather dust on the shelves, but to share with the young generation as our views and aspirations for our countries and for our future. So you and I really also have to think. I see in your background you have lots of books, and I bet there's no book by Tihomir Kukolja there. They're all written by other people. So you and I should really document some of these things, including the time we've had together. I know we can have a book just about our own association in England, in Croatia, and all those other connections we've had in other parts of the world. So from me, on that note, and that challenge that I'm giving to you and myself, that let's document some of these things over and above the documentation that we've done on this video, which I know we are going to post on different platforms, but let's also document in book form for the future generations regarding the teachings of Christ, our journalism, broadcasting, and our families.
Let's do it. I agree with you, John. And thank you again. And we will
Thank you very
much. God bless you.